The Cloud Painter. Arlo stood on the green hill just outside his small village, the soft wind brushing his face. In his hands, he held a strange brush, long and thin, made from kite string tied to soft feathers. This was no ordinary brush. Arlo used it to paint clouds in the sky. He lifted the brush high and moved it gently, like he was drawing on an invisible canvas. Slowly, the white clouds above began to change shape. First, a fluffy sheep appeared, then a proud lion, and even a jumping rabbit made from soft cotton clouds. The villagers below stopped and smiled, looking up at the sky. Children pointed and laughed, watching Arlo's art float high above them. "Look, a dragon," a little girl shouted, her eyes wide with wonder. Arlo smiled softly. Painting clouds was his gift. It made people happy, especially on days when the sun hid behind thick gray clouds. But lately, the sky had stayed gray for many days. No bright sun, no soft white clouds. Just a heavy, cold sky that seemed to press down on the earth. Arlo missed his brush and the clear sky. One morning, he climbed the hill again. The wind was still and quiet. The clouds, when they came, were not like before. They huddled together, low and heavy, like a group of sad sheep. Arlo felt their sadness in the air. He sat down, took his brush, and gently touched the sky with it. But the gray clouds did not move. They stayed close, too tired or too sad to change. Arlo closed his eyes. He thought about how the clouds must feel. They were trapped and heavy, unable to dance or play in the sky. Then an idea came to him. Maybe the clouds needed more than just shapes. Maybe they needed a way to feel free again. He picked up his brush and began to paint slowly with long, soft strokes. The brush flew through the air like a kite dancing in the wind. From the gray sky, a bright rainbow started to appear, a bridge made of colors stretching far and wide. The clouds watched the rainbow bridge with wide eyes. Slowly, they began to drift apart. The heavy grayness lifted. The clouds moved through the rainbow, and as they crossed, they changed. Where once were sad, gray sheep, now gentle rabbits hopped softly across the sky. Where thick clouds had been, graceful swans flew, their wings made of soft white mist. The villagers cheered. Arlo smiled, feeling the wind wrap around him like a warm hug. The sky was alive again. But Arlo knew the work was not finished. The sky was still fragile, and the clouds still needed his care. He took a deep breath and looked up once more. The brush was ready. The wind was ready. And so was Arlo. Days passed, and the sky grew brighter with every stroke of Arlo's brush. The rabbits hopped gently among the fluffy clouds, and the swans glided smoothly, their wings sparkling in the sunlight. The village was filled with joy once more, and children played outside, pointing at the shapes in the sky. One afternoon, as Arlo sat on the hill with his brush resting on his knee, a soft breeze carried a voice to him. It was a small, trembling sound, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. "Arlo!" He looked around but saw no one. The voice came again, this time clearer. "Arlo, help us!" His heart beat faster. The clouds? Were they speaking to him? He closed his eyes and listened. The wind brushed his face like gentle fingers, carrying a sad story. "We are lost, we need you." Arlo's fingers tightened around the brush. He stood up and looked to the sky. The clouds had gathered again, but this time they did not look heavy or gray. Instead, they seemed confused, as if searching for a place to rest. Arlo took a deep breath and lifted his brush. The wind picked up, swirling around him like a soft dance. He felt the brush pull lightly, guiding him. He began to paint again, slow, careful strokes that wove between the clouds. He made soft paths like river streams winding through the sky. The clouds moved along the paths, following the lines Arlo painted. As they traveled, their shapes changed again. Some became butterflies, others turned into gentle deer, and a few sparkled like stars. Arlo smiled, feeling the magic of the brush and the wind working together. Suddenly, he heard the voice again, stronger this time. "Thank you, Arlo." The clouds floated closer, surrounding him in a soft, cool mist. It felt like a gentle hug from the sky itself. "Why are you lost?" Arlo asked quietly. The wind swirled around, and the clouds shifted to form small shapes like little faces, soft and bright. "We have forgotten how to be free," they said. "We stayed too long, too close, and the sky forgot to welcome us." Arlo nodded. He understood. Sometimes even the sky could forget how to be open. He looked at his brush and then at the clouds. "I will help you remember." For hours, Arlo painted. He painted doors in the clouds that opened wide to blue skies and windows that let sunlight pour through. He painted gentle hands that lifted the clouds, letting them float far and wide. Slowly, the clouds began to smile, their soft shapes stretching and growing. They lifted from the hill, rising high above the trees and mountains. Arlo watched as they drifted away, dancing on the wind like children set free. As night came, the stars twinkled brightly. Arlo sat back, tired but happy. The sky was alive again, full of color and stories. And Arlo, the cloud painter, felt he had found his place in the world. The next morning, Arlo woke to a gentle breeze and the soft sound of birds singing. He rubbed his eyes and stepped outside, feeling the cool grass beneath his feet. The sky was clear, painted a bright blue, with just a few clouds floating lazily like cotton balls. Arlo smiled. It was a perfect day for painting. He grabbed his kite string brush and walked to his favorite hill. As he climbed, the wind tugged at his clothes and whispered through the leaves. When he reached the top, he looked around. The village was waking up, smoke curled from chimneys, and children's laughter floated on the breeze. Arlo lifted his brush toward the sky. He was ready to paint new shapes, new stories for the clouds. Suddenly, a small voice called out from behind. "Arlo, wait!" He turned to see Lila, a girl from the village, running up the hill. Her hair was messy from the wind and her cheeks were rosy. "Lila, good morning," Arlo said with a warm smile. "Good morning," she said, panting. "I saw the clouds last night. They were beautiful. But I don't understand. How do you paint the sky?" Arlo laughed softly. "It's a secret, but I can show you a little." Lila's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Please." Arlo nodded and handed her a small piece of kite string tied to a feather. "Try holding this like a brush and feel the wind." Lila held the brush carefully. The wind blew gently, lifting the feather and making it dance in her hand. "Now imagine the clouds are soft clay," Arlo said. "Use the brush to shape them like this." He moved his own brush in slow circles, drawing soft shapes in the air. Lila copied him, her small hand moving clumsily but with growing confidence. Suddenly, the clouds above began to shift. A tiny bird appeared, followed by a laughing fox and then a bright butterfly. Lila gasped, "It's true! You really can paint clouds." Arlo smiled. The sky listens when you paint with kindness. They spent the morning painting together. Arlo taught Lila how to feel the wind's rhythm and how to follow the clouds' gentle dance. As the sun climbed higher, the clouds turned into a parade of animals, elephants, dolphins, and even a shy turtle. The villagers looked up, smiling and waving. "You're amazing, Arlo," Lila said, beaming. Arlo felt a warm glow in his chest. Sharing his gift made it even more special. But as the day passed, dark clouds began to gather at the edge of the sky. The wind grew colder, and the colors of the rainbow bridge faded. Arlo frowned. The sky is changing again. Lila looked up, worried. "What will you do?" Arlo hugged his brush tight. "I will paint like always. The sky needs hope." He took a deep breath and began to move his brush through the air once more. Arlo's brush flew through the air, guided by the wind's soft whispers. He painted long, sweeping lines that curled and twirled like ribbons. The clouds above began to stir, slowly at first, then with more energy. But the gray grew stronger, spreading like a shadow over the village. The animals in the clouds faded, and the sky felt heavy once again. Arlo's heart tightened. He knew this was no ordinary weather. It was as if the sky was tired, sad even, and wanted to hide from the world. He looked around for Lila, who stood close, watching him with wide eyes. "Arlo, can I help?" she asked softly. Arlo smiled, grateful for her courage. "Yes, Lila. You can help me paint hope." Together, they lifted their brushes. The wind picked up, swirling leaves and petals around them. Arlo showed Lila how to move gently, following the wind's rhythm. They painted bright colors into the clouds, soft yellows like morning sun, warm oranges like a glowing fire, and pinks like a gentle hug. The clouds began to change. The heavy gray melted away, replaced by fluffy shapes that bounced and danced. A family of rabbits appeared, hopping happily through the sky. Swans glided smoothly, their wings shining like pearls. The village cheered as the sky came alive again. But then something strange happened. The clouds started to break apart and tiny drops of water fell, soft at first, then faster. "Rain," the wind whispered in Arlo's ear. "Even hope needs rain to grow." Arlo nodded. He smiled at Lila. "The sky is healing." They watched as the rain watered the fields, making the flowers bloom and the grass shine. After the rain stopped, the sun peeked out and a new rainbow appeared, brighter than ever before. Arlo and Lila stood side by side, their brushes resting, hearts full. The sky was alive, filled with stories and dreams. And Arlo knew, no matter how gray the days might get, there was always a way to paint hope back into the world. Days passed, and the village blossomed with color. Flowers stretched toward the sun, and the air smelled sweet like honey and fresh rain. The children played under the bright sky, chasing shadows made by the drifting cloud animals. Arlo and Lila had become friends who shared a secret: how to speak with the wind and paint the sky. One afternoon, As they sat on the hill, Arlo noticed a new feeling in the air. The wind was soft, almost shy, and the clouds were quiet. "Something's different," Arlo said, watching the sky. Lila nodded. "It feels calm, but also strange." Suddenly, a soft murmur came from the clouds. It was like a gentle song, almost too quiet to hear. Arlo closed his eyes, listening. The clouds sang about a place far away, a distant mountain where the sky met the earth. "It's a message," Arlo said softly. "The clouds want to show us something." Lila's eyes sparkled with wonder. "Can we go?" Arlo smiled. "We can travel in our minds, with our hearts." He took the kite string brush and painted a path in the sky, a shimmering ribbon of light leading to the far mountain. "Follow me," he said. Together, they imagined themselves floating along the painted path. The wind lifted them gently, carrying their dreams. As they traveled, the clouds changed shape again, this time into soaring eagles, playful otters, and laughing monkeys. The sky stretched wide and deep, filled with colors they had never seen before. Soft purples like twilight and bright golds like the morning sun. When they reached the mountain, the clouds settled softly on its peak, like a warm blanket. Arlo and Lila felt peace in the air. The mountain whispered stories of ancient skies and forgotten songs. They understood that the sky was not just above them. It was part of a bigger world, full of mysteries and magic. As the sun began to set, they floated back down the ribbon of light, carrying the sky's stories in their hearts. The village below glowed in the golden light, and Arlo looked at Lila with a smile. "Tomorrow we will paint those stories," he said. Lila nodded, her eyes shining with hope. The sky was alive with dreams again, and Arlo knew their journey had only just begun. That night, Arlo lay awake under his window, the stars twinkling softly above. The mountain stories danced in his mind like gentle waves, and he could still feel the soft brush of clouds against his skin. Morning came with a golden light that filled his small room. Arlo jumped out of bed, grabbed his kite string brush, and ran outside. Lila was waiting for him on the hill, her face bright with excitement. "Did you dream of the mountain too?" she asked. Arlo nodded. "Yes, and the sky stories are calling us." Together they looked up. The sky was clear, painted in soft blues and whites. Arlo dipped his brush in the air, feeling the wind wrap around it like silk. He started to paint the mountain stories, the quiet hush of snow, the crackle of frozen streams, the soft steps of animals moving through the cold. Lila followed, painting delicate snowflakes that floated down like tiny stars. The clouds above shifted and shimmered. Slowly, shapes began to form. A sleeping bear curled beneath a tree, a swift fox darting through the snow, and a wise owl watching from a branch. The villagers gathered below, eyes wide with wonder. "Look!" a man shouted. "It's like the mountain itself is telling us a story." Arlo smiled. The sky was speaking again, and he was its painter. But as the day wore on, the air grew colder, and the wind whispered warnings. "Winter is coming," Arlo said softly. Lila shivered. "Will the clouds be scared again?" Arlo shook his head. "No, now they know they are not alone. We will paint with them no matter the season." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Arlo and Lila sat together, brushes in hand, ready to welcome the coming winter with colors and stories painted into the clouds. The sky was their canvas, and hope was their paint. The first snowflakes fell softly the next morning, drifting down like tiny feathers. The village woke to a world wrapped in white, quiet and sparkling under the pale sun. Arlo pulled his warm scarf tighter and climbed the hill with Lila. The cold air made their breath visible, little clouds that vanished into the sky. Arlo's brush felt cold in his hand, but he lifted it bravely. The wind was gentle, carrying the crisp smell of pine and frost. He began to paint, slow and steady strokes tracing shapes in the sky. The clouds thickened, becoming soft and heavy like blankets of cotton. He painted animals that could live in winter, hares with thick fur, strong deer with proud antlers, and birds that soared through the chilly air. Lila added sparkling snowflakes, swirling in graceful patterns around the animals. The villagers watched, wrapped in warm clothes, their eyes shining with wonder. "Look, the snow fox!" a little boy cried, pointing up. Arlo felt a warm glow inside despite the cold. The sky was alive with winter's magic. But as the day went on, the clouds grew darker again. The gray spread slowly, covering the bright shapes. Arlo frowned. The sky seemed heavy, tired from the cold. Suddenly, the wind shifted. A sharp gust swept over the hill, carrying a soft, sad whisper. "Arlo, help!" The clouds huddled close, shivering in the cold. Arlo looked at Lila. "The clouds need us again." Lila nodded, her eyes full of determination. Together, they lifted their brushes and painted a warm, golden light into the sky. Slowly, the gray lifted, replaced by soft, glowing shapes. The animals in the clouds seemed to smile and move with new energy. The villagers cheered, their faces bright despite the cold. Arlo knew the winter would be long and hard, but with his brush and the wind, the sky could always find warmth and hope, and he would never stop painting. The cold days stretched on, and the village was wrapped in white silence. Snow covered the rooftops and fields, and the trees wore coats of ice. The wind sang through the branches, sometimes soft and gentle, sometimes loud and wild. Arlo and Lila met every day on the hill, brushes in hand, painting the sky's stories. One morning, as the sun rose like a soft fire in the cold blue sky, Arlo noticed something new. The clouds were thinner now, almost transparent, like fragile sheets of silk. He touched the brush to the air and felt the wind pull gently. The clouds seemed shy, almost scared to move. "Lila," Arlo said, "the clouds are tired. Winter has been hard for them." Lila nodded, her breath making small clouds in the cold air. "What can we do?" Arlo thought for a moment, then smiled softly. "We can paint a warm place for them to rest." He began to paint slowly, drawing shapes that glowed with soft light. A cozy cave made of sunlight, a gentle fire that never burned, and soft pillows made of golden clouds. The clouds floated closer, curious and hopeful. Arlo and Lila painted a safe home for the sky, a place where the clouds could find peace. As they worked, the wind wrapped around them like a blanket, carrying the warmth through the cold air. The clouds began to glow softly, shining with colors of gold and pink. The village watched in wonder as the sky transformed. Arlo felt a deep joy inside. Even in the coldest times, there was always a way to bring light. That night, the stars twinkled like tiny lanterns, and Arlo dreamed of clouds resting safely, ready to dance again when spring came. Spring arrived slowly, like a shy smile after a long sleep. The snow melted into soft streams that sang through the village. The air grew warmer, filled with the scent of fresh grass and blooming flowers. Arlo and Lila stood on the hill, watching the sky change. The clouds were light and playful again, drifting like cotton balls on a gentle breeze. Arlo lifted his kite-string brush, feeling the wind dance around his fingers. He began to paint bright shapes, birds soaring high, butterflies fluttering, and even a playful fox chasing its tail. Lila joined him, her small hands moving with growing confidence. Together, they painted the sky with joy. The villagers smiled and laughed, their hearts lifted by the cloud animals. But as the day went on, a soft gray shadow crept across the sky. The clouds gathered once more, their shapes blending into a heavy, quiet mass. Arlo's smile faded. He knew the sky was tired again. Lila looked at him, her eyes full of worry. "What now?" Arlo took a deep breath. "We keep painting. The clouds need us, no matter the season." He dipped his brush into the air and began to paint a bridge, a bright, rainbow path stretching across the sky. Slowly, the clouds drifted apart, following the colorful ribbon. As they crossed the bridge, their shapes changed. The gray clouds became gentle rabbits hopping joyfully, graceful swans gliding with soft wings, and playful dolphins leaping through the sky. The village cheered, their voices rising like music. Arlo felt the wind wrap around him, warm and kind. The sky was alive again, and Arlo, the cloud painter, knew that as long as he could hold his brush, hope would never fade. As the weeks passed, Arlo's days became filled with painting and laughter. The village watched eagerly each morning as the sky transformed into a gallery of cloud animals floating gently above their heads. One soft afternoon, as Arlo sat on the hill with his brush resting on his knee, he noticed something different. The wind was quiet, almost still, and the clouds moved slowly like they were tired from a long journey. Arlo closed his eyes and listened carefully. The silence was heavy, but inside it he heard a soft heartbeat, a slow, steady pulse from the clouds. He opened his eyes and looked at Lila, who was nearby, sketching shapes in the dirt with a stick. "The clouds need a rest," he said softly. Lila nodded, her face thoughtful. "How can we help them rest?" Arlo smiled gently. "We can paint a quiet night, a peaceful place for the clouds to sleep." He lifted his brush and began to move it slowly, tracing soft, wide circles in the sky. The clouds started to change color, shifting from bright white to soft shades of blue and lavender. Arlo painted stars that twinkled gently and a silver moon that glowed like a lantern. Lila joined him, painting little dreams, tiny animals made of light, floating peacefully. The clouds wrapped themselves around the night Arlo and Lila painted, settling like a soft blanket. The village grew quiet beneath the sky's gentle glow. People looked up, feeling calm and safe. Arlo felt his heart fill with peace. He knew the sky needed nights like this to gather strength for new days. And with his brush, he could give them that. The peaceful nights painted by Arlo and Lila became a gift for the village. Each evening, families gathered outside, wrapped in blankets and holding warm cups of tea. They watched the stars twinkle softly and the moon glow with a gentle light, feeling comfort in the quiet sky. One night, as Arlo sat on the hill alone, the wind whispered softly around him. The clouds above were calm and still, but Arlo felt a new energy in the air, a secret waiting to be discovered. Suddenly, a soft shimmer appeared among the stars. Tiny lights twinkled like fireflies, dancing in the sky. Arlo's eyes widened. He lifted his brush and began to paint along the shimmering lights. The clouds around the stars began to change, glowing with soft colors, pinks, blues, and golds. The fireflies grew brighter, and the clouds formed delicate shapes, small glowing animals that floated gently through the night. Arlo smiled. The sky was telling him a new story, one of light and magic. He painted carefully, weaving the fireflies and clouds together like threads in a tapestry. As the night deepened, the glowing animals grew in number and color. They danced and played above the village, lighting the dark with their soft glow. The villagers watched in wonder, their faces shining with smiles. Lila came running up the hill, breathless with excitement. "Arlo, look! The sky is alive with stars and magic." Arlo nodded. The clouds and stars have found a way to shine together. Together, they painted new shapes, bright stars with wings, glowing rabbits, and gentle swans made of light. The night sky became a dreamscape filled with stories that whispered hope and wonder. Arlo knew the sky's magic was endless, and he was its painter. The village woke the next morning to a soft glow lingering in the sky. The stars from the night before seemed to have left behind a gentle shimmer, making the clouds sparkle like tiny jewels. Arlo stood on the hill, his brush ready, feeling the morning breeze wrap around him like a warm shawl. Lila joined him, her cheeks flushed from the crisp air. "Do you think the magic will stay?" Lila asked, her eyes bright with hope. Arlo smiled. "Magic is like the wind, it moves and changes, but it's always around us." He dipped his brush in the air and began to paint soft shapes, doves spreading their wings, deer stepping lightly, and playful kittens chasing invisible threads. The clouds danced in response, forming the animals perfectly. The villagers stopped their work and watched, their faces lifted and peaceful. But as midday approached, the sky began to shift again. Dark clouds gathered at the edges, slowly creeping toward the village. Arlo frowned. "The gray is coming back." Lila bit her lip. "Will the magic disappear?" Arlo shook his head. "No. The sky needs all kinds of days, the bright and the gray. Our job is to remind it of its light." He lifted his brush high and began to paint a bright sun surrounded by soft rings of light. The wind picked up, swirling leaves and petals around them. The clouds responded, pushing the gray away with gentle pressure. Colors returned, warm yellows, soft pinks, and light blues. The village cheered, their spirits lifted. Arlo and Lila smiled at each other, knowing that the sky's story was never finished. It was a dance of light and shadow, hope and challenge. And they were the painters who would keep it alive. The days grew longer and the warmth of spring filled the air. Flowers bloomed in bright colors and the birds sang songs that floated through the village like music. Arlo and Lila spent every morning on the hill, painting the sky with new stories. The clouds became lions with soft manes, rabbits chasing each other, and swans gliding gracefully over the sunlit fields. One morning, as Arlo reached for his brush, a sudden gust of wind nearly knocked him over. The wind was wild and strong, twisting through the trees and carrying the scent of faraway places. "Something is coming," Arlo said, steadying himself. Lila looked up, her eyes wide. "What is it?" Arlo didn't answer. Instead, he held his brush tightly and looked to the sky. The clouds swirled and darkened, moving faster than before. The wind howled like a wild animal, and the village grew quiet. Suddenly, the clouds exploded into shapes, storms, lightning, and thunder. The sky was alive with power and fury. Arlo felt the wind push against him, but he stood firm. "We must paint," he said to Lila. "We must calm the sky." Together, they moved their brushes in slow, gentle circles. They painted soft blue skies behind the storm, calm seas after the waves, and quiet forests after the rain. The clouds began to soften, the lightning fading, and the thunder growing distant. The wind calmed, turning into a gentle breeze that wrapped around the village like a soft blanket. The villagers breathed sighs of relief and smiled at the sky's peaceful face. Arlo looked at Lila and nodded. "The sky is strong, but it needs our kindness." Lila smiled back. "And our paint." The sun broke through the clouds, shining warm and bright. The sky was alive again, and Arlo knew he was ready for whatever came next. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the village in golden light. The air smelled sweet with blooming flowers and fresh earth. Arlo and Lila sat quietly on their hill, their brushes resting beside them. "Do you think the sky ever gets tired of us?" Lila asked softly. Arlo smiled, watching a soft cloud drift like a gentle sheep. "Maybe, but the sky and we share something important, a promise. To care for each other." Lila nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "I like that." Suddenly, the wind stirred, carrying soft whispers. The clouds above began to gather again, but this time they shimmered with silver light. Arlo lifted his brush and felt a new energy in the air. The clouds were not heavy or sad, they were bright and full of life. He began to paint slowly, making shapes of magical creatures, unicorns with flowing manes, graceful deer with stars in their eyes, and birds with wings made of light. Lila joined him, her strokes gentle but sure. Together, they filled the sky with wonders that seemed to glow from within. The villagers watched in awe, their faces glowing with wonder. As the sun set, the magical animals floated across the sky, carrying dreams and hope to every corner of the village. Arlo felt his heart swell with joy. The sky was no longer just a canvas. It was a living story, and he was its storyteller. The next morning, a soft rain began to fall, pattering gently on the leaves and rooftops. The village awoke wrapped in a cool mist, the air fresh and clean. Arlo and Lila stood on their hill, watching the sky through the raindrops. The clouds were thick and gray, but there was a calmness in them, like a quiet breath before a smile. Arlo lifted his brush and dipped it into the wet air. The wind played with the string, tugging it softly. He painted gentle shapes, turtles slowly moving through the water, frogs leaping happily, and fish swimming in rivers made of cloud. Lila added sparkling raindrops that danced around the animals, catching the light like tiny diamonds. The clouds responded, drifting apart and shining softly through the rain. The villagers smiled as the rain washed the earth, helping flowers bloom and filling the wells. After the rain stopped, the sun peeked out, and a bright rainbow stretched across the sky. Arlo and Lila smiled, feeling the promise of new beginnings. The sky was alive with stories once more, and Arlo knew that no matter the weather, the clouds would always listen. The village was alive with color. Trees wore bright green leaves, flowers bloomed in every corner, and the air buzzed with the songs of birds and bees. Arlo and Lila felt the warmth of summer wrap around them like a gentle hug. One afternoon, the wind whispered a secret to Arlo as he stood on the hill, kite string brush in hand. "The clouds are restless," the wind said softly. Arlo looked up. The clouds above were moving quickly, chasing each other in fast circles, swirling like dancers in a bright, open sky. Lila ran up beside him, breathless. "What's happening?" Arlo smiled. "The clouds want to play." He lifted his brush and began to paint soft shapes. Playful puppies chasing tails, kittens pouncing on invisible toys, and birds singing happy songs. Lila laughed, following his strokes with her own brush, adding butterflies that fluttered around the animals. The clouds danced with them, changing shapes in a joyful game. The village watched, laughter spilling into the warm air. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Arlo and Lila felt a deep happiness inside. The sky was alive, full of stories and play, and with each brushstroke, they painted a world filled with hope. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the hills, Arlo sat quietly on the hilltop. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and purple, and the clouds floated lazily like gentle dreams. But something felt different. The wind was still. No playful dance, no soft whispers. Arlo looked up and saw the clouds gathering close together, forming a thick, gray wall. He sighed and held his brush tightly. Lila ran to his side, her eyes full of concern. Arlo, the clouds look sad again. Arlo nodded. Yes, they do, but we can help. He dipped his brush into the cool air and began to paint soft, gentle shapes, comforting animals like cozy bears curled up for sleep, quiet owls watching the night, and soft rabbits cuddling close. Lila followed, painting warm colors, golden light, soft pinks, and gentle blues. Slowly, the clouds began to soften. The gray wall broke apart, revealing patches of stars twinkling behind. The wind picked up again, carrying the sweet scent of night flowers. The village grew quiet beneath the gentle sky, wrapped in peace. Arlo smiled and looked at Lila. Sometimes, even the sky needs a quiet hug. Lila smiled back, and we are here to give it. The next morning, the village awoke to soft sunlight filtering through the trees. The air smelled fresh and clean, like a new beginning. Arlo and Lila climbed the hill once again, ready to greet the sky. The clouds were light and fluffy, floating gently like feathers. Arlo lifted his brush and felt the wind wrap around it like a soft ribbon. He began to paint gentle animals, a mother deer and her fawn, a family of ducks swimming in a cloud pond, and tiny birds hatching from glowing eggs. Lila added soft flowers that bloomed in the sky, petals spreading wide like smiles. The villagers watched, their faces peaceful and full of hope. As the day wore on, the clouds began to shift, moving closer together. Arlo felt the familiar pull in the air. The clouds were preparing for something. Suddenly, the sky darkened, and a cool rain began to fall. But this rain was different. It sparkled like tiny diamonds, shimmering in the sunlight. The villagers laughed and danced in the sparkling rain, their hearts lifted by the magic. Arlo smiled, knowing the sky was full of surprises and stories yet to come. With his brush in hand and the wind as his guide, he was ready for every new chapter. Evening came softly, wrapping the village in a quiet glow. The clouds hung low, painted in gentle shades of lavender and rose. Arlo sat on the hill, his brush resting beside him, feeling the cool air settle around him like a blanket. Lila joined him, holding a small jar filled with fireflies they had caught earlier. The tiny lights flickered like stars, casting warm glows on their faces. "Do you think the clouds ever dream?" Lila asked softly. Arlo smiled and looked up. "I think they do. I believe the clouds dream of flying free, of colors and stories yet to be told." He lifted his brush gently and traced soft lines in the sky. The clouds began to shimmer and shift, forming shapes of sleeping animals. Rabbits curled in soft nests, swans resting on quiet lakes, and gentle deer beneath twinkling stars. The wind carried a soft lullaby, wrapping the village in peace. Arlo felt a calm settle in his heart, knowing that the clouds were safe and resting. "Tomorrow," he said, "we will paint new stories. But for now, the sky dreams." Lila nodded, her eyes heavy but happy. Together, they watched as the stars began to shine, lighting the night with quiet magic. The dawn broke softly, painting the world in pale gold and gentle pinks. Arlo and Lila stood once more on their hill, their breath rising in small clouds as the cool morning air wrapped around them. The sky above was clear, stretching wide and endless. The clouds floated lazily, like soft pillows drifting on a calm sea. Arlo lifted his kite-string brush with steady hands, feeling the wind's quiet encouragement. He began to paint slow, gentle strokes, weaving shapes that told a story. a story of friendship, hope, and the endless dance between earth and sky. Rabbits hopped lightly across the clouds, swans glided with graceful wings, and rainbows arched softly, connecting dreams to reality. Lila smiled, painting alongside him, her small hands steady and sure. Together, they finished the story in the sky, a beautiful ending that was really just a new beginning. The village below awoke, faces turned upward with wonder and joy. Arlo breathed in the fresh morning air, heart full. The clouds had found their song again, and with every brushstroke, he had helped them sing. The sky was alive, the world was bright, and Arlo, the cloud painter, knew his work would never truly end. The end.